Welcome back to Close Up and our extended conversation with Governor Kelly Ayotte. We want to get right back into the discussion with an issue that is new and increasingly controversial around the country. And Governor, that's what to do about data centers, which, for most people, they look like these benign buildings. But as they've gone in around the country, neighbors have started to complain about noise, other issues, water, electricity costs going up. This is the fuel of the new digital age, we're told. This is the backbone of the new internet and artificial intelligence and all this. Some of your fellow Republicans want to make it easier for these facilities to go in and harder for local communities to stop them. What's your perspective on this?
My perspective is actually all about energy, Adam. Our energy costs are too high in New Hampshire. Data centers take a lot of energy. And when I sat down with the head of the grid, the head of ISO New England, I asked him about data centers and what it would do to our energy costs in New England. He basically told me that the capacity of all New England without jacking up energy costs is about 300 to 400 megawatts. That's one data center. So we have a real issue. If we have the siting of data centers here, energy costs could skyrocket. So that is my concern. I'm not fundamentally against data centers, but I am against increasing our energy costs. So those issues have to be taken into consideration. Unless someone is going to build more energy capacity, then they're going to have a real problem siting data centers in New England in terms of energy.
The legislation that's moving its way through the legislature could potentially reach your desk, allows those data centers by right in the commercially zoned or industrially zoned land.
We can't do that because that will not take into account the potential to increase the costs for Granite Staters when it comes to their energy bills here. And I do not want to do it. I want to decrease energy costs. I want more energy in the region. These data centers take a lot of energy. And again, I cited you what the head of ISO New England said. We really have an energy issue here in New England.
Do you want to see state level rules about where these can go, or should it be local control?
Listen, I want people locally to have a voice. But the state really should have a weigh in when it comes to what it will do to the costs of Granite Staters when it comes to their energy bills. And this is a very, very important issue.
Some of the supporters of these data centers compare the criticism or any opposition to, wind back the clock 120 years, and they say, oh, this is exactly what people said about electrification efforts, that when power lines were going up, people were like, oh my goodness, it's so terrible.
Yeah, but the difference is when we were putting power lines up, we were actually getting people access to energy. Data centers take a tremendous amount of energy. And I would say, I don't know of anyone in New Hampshire who thinks their energy bills are too low. I talk to businesses all the time who say to me, boy, Governor, can you work on getting our energy costs down? And I cannot look them in the face and say, we're going to add data centers knowing how much energy they take without taking energy costs into consideration. And this is a huge issue for us. And that's why citing them here has grave implications in terms of our energy bills.
Right. And one last question on this front. And I know that you don't like to tap into your foreign policy expertise too much anymore as the governor of New Hampshire. But a lot of people say, hey, any impediment we put against these things in America is just one more advantage for China, who's just going to build these things like crazy and have a huge edge on the United States ultimately in computing and in artificial intelligence. What do you say to that?
Well, let me just say this. There are other regions in the country that have much lower energy costs than us that perhaps don't have the same issues that New Hampshire has. I'm focused on New Hampshire. I'm focused on energy bills in New Hampshire. And we are not going to put data centers in places and not have the energy to support them and drive up energy costs. That doesn't work.
There were headlines last week that two of the people who were aboard that cruise ship where the Hantavirus outbreak happened to be from New Hampshire. There's always a New Hampshire connection somehow. It always lands in the Granite State's lap. What information, if any, are you getting from the federal level about next steps and how this outbreak is being handled?
Right. So our public health officials are monitoring this very closely. Dr. Chan, the head of our public health in New Hampshire, we're following his advice. He is in contact and his team with CDC. We do have two individuals. They are not back in New Hampshire, though, and we will continue to track not only their situation as they're monitored by the CDC, but anything that comes up in the state of New Hampshire, and we will let people know right away any public health recommendations, but there are none right now.
And this isn't spreading in the same way as COVID-19 did.
It spreads differently, as I understand it.
And we still have this muscle memory of, having gone through this before a little bit. It's like we weren't that worried until we absolutely had to be, and then it was pretty bad. From your discussions with Dr. Chan, how concerned should the public be about this hantavirus outbreak?
I would say right now, we don't have any information that there is a risk right now in New Hampshire. We would get information out as soon as we had any. But again, the two individuals aren't in New Hampshire right now. I think it's important for people to understand that. And if we get any further information and we need the public to take steps, we would let them know. But right now, that is not the case.
Let's return to the governor's race. And your likely opponent, Cindy Warmington, was recently recorded at a Democratic campaign event calling it, quote, weird that you had been touting the results under the new bail law that incarceration has gone up in certain counties. What was your reaction to hearing that?
My reaction is I think it's pretty weird that she doesn't want to keep dangerous criminals incarcerated so they can't go on to harm other people. And I know with this bail issue, I heard just here in Manchester, there was someone who was stabbed to death by someone who had been out on bail, shouldn't have been out on bail. We have cases like, I wish the law was in place when Marisol Fuentes was murdered. Police officers that were assaulted, just in Bedford, a police officer shot by someone who was out on bail that shouldn't have been. So we're talking about 12 of the most serious offenses in our state, violent criminals, those who prey on children. I met with law enforcement on this, and so there's only one thing that's weird, and that's weird that her position would be that we shouldn't incarcerate violent criminals.
And just to clarify, the Warmington campaign has said that she supports the law, even if she has said the thing.
Well, I don't understand. If she supports the law, then why is she making comments like that? If you support the law, then you understand it's had a very important impact on helping keep our public safe here in New Hampshire. So her statements just aren't consistent with that.
You mentioned the Marisol Fuentes case, and there was a lot of discussion last year coming out of that about, again, how to improve the bail system, which was in process, but also the judiciary and what to do about judges and their decision-making process. And it looks like we're probably not going to see anything change on that front legislatively. There's always the difficulty of, separate branches and trying not to mess too much.
Separation of powers.
Right. But, people want accountability. And the circuit court judges really came out strongly against this idea of, having more public access to that, and certainly the idea of statistics of how their decisions are going one way or the other. You come from the legal world, so a lot of these people are your former colleagues and friends, but are you at all troubled by the unwillingness to accept even a small amount of change on this front?
What I would say is this. One of the things we're doing that's important with the court system is in terms of keeping the information. So when there is a bail order in place, the Attorney General's office and the Department of Safety is working to make sure that immediately from the court system, we get that information out to law enforcement to protect the public. That hasn't happened to the extent it should. That's happening right now. And then when it comes to the judiciary, I nominate judges, and I can tell you the judges that I will be nominating will be focused on making sure they follow our laws, enforce public safety, and are focusing on their role. Their role is, of course, to follow the law and to enforce the Constitution. And the law is clear now on bail that the standard has changed, and they need to apply it accordingly. So I am disappointed when judges don't follow the law that has been passed to protect the public. And so we are going to highlight that whenever that happens. But I can assure you that when I nominate someone, this is going to be the top of my mind, and we will nominate judges that follow the law. It
feels like right now in the legislature, there are about 24 different bills that deal with the separation of gender or sex issue, the kind of bill that you vetoed last year. This is the so-called Women's Spaces bill that would allow segregation by sex in, say, locker rooms, bathrooms, public spaces like that where they have been traditionally separated. You previously said, when we talked about this, it wasn't worth the litigation cost to the state. And we know that Governor Sununu had basically said, this isn't an issue in New Hampshire. It doesn't happen here.
Right.
Well, now we have this situation at have you seen the reporting out of Fox News, Planet Fitness in Concord, where a woman had a membership and believe she saw an individual who was biologically male in the women's locker room and reported this to the front desk, and then she ended up allegedly having her membership terminated and getting kicked out. And this is potentially a legal issue here. Does this case change your thinking at all on this bill?
Well, first of all, the bills that they keep sending me, they sent to Governor Sununu as well. He vetoed it. I vetoed it. They have really come up with very overbroad solutions that I think are going to cause a lot of issues in the state. And so this issue in terms of, obviously, I think Planet Fitness needs to resolve that themselves. But when I look at this, the solutions that they put forward to me, they don't fit our state. They're not Granite State solutions. Of course, we want people to feel safe, and we want to make sure that everyone has the opportunity to participate and to use public spaces. But again, the solutions they've sent me really don't solve this problem.
All right, Governor Kelly Ayotte, we've hit our time here on Close-Up, and we'll see you later in the campaign process, but we appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and we'll be right back with Jeremy Ben-Ami of J Street on the surge in anti-Semitism in the United States. Stay with us.